Okay, next we have Gurmukh, who has a background in architecture from the Southern California Institute of Architecture. He's an architectural designer turned digital artist who currently lives and works in LA.
You have to press play? Hello, everybody. I'm a digital environment and hard surface artist working in the entertainment industry. In my presentation, I'm going to explain a little bit about my background. I'm going to talk about my switch into digital art. I'm going to show my process for 2 projects, and then share 2 of my more recent projects. Slides might go kind of slow. It's all right. My educational background is in architecture. I have my bachelor's degree in a more traditional study of architecture from Arizona State University, and my master's degree in a more experimental study of architecture from Southern California Institute of Architecture. More experimental version of architecture means my thesis project was a 13 billion square foot building that took over the city of LA. Next, please. I also have 6+ years working in the architecture field, where I worked on large developments in the Middle East and China, designed man-made islands, worked on malls, residential communities, airport terminals, houses, and much more. Next, please. Working in architecture wasn't satisfying to me. The rules and regulations of the profession killed me creatively, so I decided to make a switch in my career to become a digital artist in entertainment. I'm going to share my process for creating 2 different projects, a sci-fi mech on this side and a fantasy mosque on the other side. In my work, I always try and blur the boundary between reality and fantasy, trying to create something with real details, but a more fantasy version of what could be reality. To start off, my sci-fi mech is called the Warrior Cricket. I knew I wanted to create a desert military robot tank, so I collected reference on everything and anything that I could think might relate to the idea. Next, I used a brush pen to quickly sketch silhouettes to figure out the massing, the stance, and the overall design of the mech. And then I chose a few silhouettes that I liked, scanned them into Photoshop, lightened the opacity to 30%, and started to sketch over those to further break down the design of the shape. Next, I jump into Maya and start designing in 3D. I do a simpler massing first to figure out the overall shapes and proportions, and then I start to build up the layers and layers of detail till the design is done. Once the modeling is complete, I start to do material tests in Photoshop. Here you can see that I've done 6 different camouflage tests painted over my robot design to see which kind of paint design and look and feel I want to go with this project. Next, I do a few render passes. They're just basic, so that I can take these into Photoshop, overlay them, and start to create the final image by painting over the basic renders with Photoshop brushes, adding photos to the backgrounds and the foregrounds, adding atmosphere and depth, and humans for scale. Once all my renders are done, make a final design page to try and tell the whole story of what this robot is. And then I post it all over the internet, enter it in some competitions, and trying to get it published. For my second project, the Fantasy Mosque, I knew I wanted to create a Middle Eastern Indian temple, so I collected reference and modeled. You can see in the bottom corner, I modeled a 3D kit of parts based off the reference that I took. And I basically stole a lot of the ideas from existing buildings because domes and towers and rails and patterns have been around for hundreds of years, so why should I redesign these myself? I then go into 3D design and start laying out the building. I first wanted to start with a more simpler design, but once I started laying things out, it looked boring, so I started adding an over amount of towers and domes. I then posted this online, and one of my friends, most people liked it, but one of my friends said, it's too much, so on the third image, I did a quick paint over in Photoshop to make sure I was going in the right direction. I liked what I was doing with atmosphere and showing depth in the piece and creating this more fantastical temple that you could not find in the real world. I then finish the model, the wireframe, do some basic render layouts, add my materials, and start to bring this into Photoshop. I add some matte painting techniques to bring photos of grass and water and plants and skies and birds and dirt and to bring my image to life, because coming out of 3D, things can be really dull and stiff and 3D CG. So I try and make it more painterly and more enjoyable to look at. And then you get the final renders. The one on this side was my first pass. It was on my old computer, which was dying at the time and couldn't really handle the project that I was working on. And a couple months later, I built a new computer, so I had the computing power and the desire to get this off my mind and bring it to the quality I really wanted. So that's the final image over there. More recently, I took a class at Noman School of Visual Effects in Hollywood. And it was a hard surface modeling, advanced Maya modeling class. And I had a lot of fun. I took somebody's original concept art and modeled their sci-fi gun, something that is used a lot in video games and stuff like that. My second project was to model a real-world vehicle. This is the HEMTT M1075 cargo truck for the military, and I put countless weeks and just sleepless nights into this project, just really enjoying the polygon modeling techniques and advancing myself. So when I start doing my own projects, I can just do this, back of my mind. It's a lot like when people go sketch.